similar to that. I'd been asked to... they had a warm-up man on that Have I Got News For You, which Harry Thompson also produced, called Fred McCauley.
Mm-hmm.
Fred was kind of bowing out of warm-up, and they needed somebody just to do the original pilot if they think it's all over. Fred declined, because he lives up in Scotland anyway. He declined the gig, and he suggested me. So they got me in. I did the pilot for it. Pilot was not very good. I did the warm-up. The audience were tough. I did my job, but the pilot was not very well received. It was not the original lineup that you subsequently saw. And that was that. But obviously Harry Thompson had then seen me do that. Fred then called time on warm-up work. So they approached me and booked me in for 2 episodes of Have I Got News For You. I did the first one, and then they went, do you want to do the rest of the series as well? So I said, yes, I did that. And at the end of the first series, they then said to me, we'd like you to guest on it, on Have I Got News For You, on the next series. I went, okay. And then in between, what happened was they then did these what they call dry run pilots, where they just do them like in an office room or whatever. They're not in a proper TV studio. Well, the first one was actually. And what they did is they got me in the afternoon to go in and play the games with the other guys, with Gary Lineker, etc. Mm-hmm. And I think they gave me £100 for it. And I thought, happy days, afternoon, comedian, getting paid, jobs are good, and do a gig in the evening as well, double up on your money. So I was well pleased, and I was thinking, if they get a series, I'll get all the warm-up work. And then they asked me back a week later, 10 days maybe, and I went in, and they did it this time in the basement of the production office building. And I kind of looked around, and other than the guys you saw on the show, which was Nick Hancock, Dave Gower, Rory McGrath, and Gary Lineker, I was the only person who was there again from the previous week. And I couldn't quite, I was a bit confused, I was not quite sure what was going on. Did the second show, and then we all went for a coffee afterwards, and Harry Thompson said to me, what do you think? And I said, I reckon if you put that in front of a real audience, it'll kill. And he said, well, I want you on the show, which was the first I'd heard of it. And then he said, but I've got a real fight on my hands because nobody knows who you are. I said, oh, well, whatever. And then I think the following Monday, I had an answer phone message from Harry saying, you're on. That was it. Yeah. I was in.
And it used to do about 12 million a week, so 12 million people suddenly knew who you were.
Yeah. I mean, we hit the ground running. I mean, we had a press conference where there were over 100 people because of because Gary Lineker and Dave Gower were there, obviously. And there was this mob of people, and it was the first time I'd faced Fleet Street like that. And I do recall there was a mic on the desk at the front, and they're all just sitting there, and I just was bored. So I just got the mic and just walked amongst them. I went, they must have thought, who the hell is this guy? So I just walked amongst them and said, come on, somebody's got a question. And I just started bullying. I'd pick somebody and go, ask a question. And stick the mic in his face, and just get the thing going, because I can't stand sitting in a sticky environment like that. It's like, no, let's get it going. Yeah. I'm here. I'd rather not be here, so let's get it done.
Yeah.
And and as a consequence, there was huge amounts of publicity. And I think the first show we got about 9 to 10 million viewers over 2 broadcasts in the same week. They had them together, and then by the time I left it, we were getting somewhere in the region of 12, which included about 3.5 million at like 12:30 on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
Which was unheard of. And it was. I mean, the viewing figures were huge. I mean, X Factor would kill for those figures now.
I think any show would kill for them figures now, wouldn't they? Really.
But then I left after 2 years because they weren't. The program format was thin. The guests they were booking were not really. They were booking famous people rather than funny people. And I just kept saying, look, you need to change the format. It's not conducive to longevity. And I actually left after series 4. They took me back in. I did the 5th series, and I left with 1 show to go because I knew it had burnt out. They hadn't listened to a word I'd said. I left. I think after one season, they used different people. Then I think they used Jonathan Ross permanently. And then 7 years later, they were down to 3 million viewers. And they axed it.
I think sometimes I think they let these shows go on too long. Anyhow, what would you describe as your comedy style? People who don't know you.
Funny.
Funny? Yeah, well, now wrong in that, that's good. Also, you mentioned the writing, which probably a stupid question, really. I try and get one in every week. Which do you prefer, performing or writing?
It's funny. It's difficult to say really because over the last 3 tours I've done have been a lot of improv. There's been like a half hour to start with. Then I set up a premise. The audience write things down, and I work through those. And I enjoy that. But I did say at the back end of the last one, which was like the third that I'd done, I said, no, next time I'm doing like full stand-up. I'm not just going to do that, like react to what they've written. I want to go back to writing, and I'm really enjoying writing again.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd written for those as well, but small amounts and a lot of improv, etc. But this time round, it's just, you know, I've got a rule now that every gig I do, I try something new. And that's going to continue throughout the tour as well. I don't intend to set foot on stage the following night unless I've got some, you know, without doing something new that night as well. It could be a line, like one line, you know, but it will be something because it's designed to stop me. The reason I did the previous formats was in the old days when I used to tour, you'd ring fence the material and go, right, that's that show, and I would get incredibly bored throughout the tour. So by doing the improv, it kept it spicy for me, and you know, you stay sharp. So this time out, it's like, no, I'm going to continue to write throughout. And the plan is, if I do a line one night, a new piece that stands alone, and it works, I'll then pull it out, and that will be the bedrock for the tour after this one.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, what would you say is the best thing about being a stand-up comic?
For me, because of what I said earlier about the various jobs I had, is the self-employed thing. You know, you within reason, you can choose when you work, which most self-employed people are in that position. It's the freedom of it, and being a stand-up versus doing television or anything, you can do what you want. It's literally, if I'm doing another 10-minute spot next week, getting ready for the tour. A promoter's kindly let me go on his bill, and I will turn up, and he won't judge me. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'm judging myself in front of the audience, and I'll turn up with the 10 that I'm going to do. I'll try it out. It'll work. Some of it won't. Some of it won't work, and I go, right, I know what I did wrong. Some of it won't work, and I go, no, that idea sucks. It was bad to begin with. But you can just do what you want. Whereas when you get to television and stuff like that, there are meetings, there's this, there's that, and it's boring.
Yeah.
And, but with stand-up, it's literally turn up, do it. You can do the same thing tomorrow night if you want, or you can change it. Wonderful.
Yeah. That's the best thing. What would you say is the worst thing about your job then?
The driving.
The travelling. The travelling. I know everybody says that. I do a lot of work with musicians, and I guess do you go over to Australia to the Australian comedy?
No. I've never. The only
gone?
time I've ever gone abroad and gigged is for corporate work.
Really?
Companies. Yeah, I've never travelled to another country to do like to a theatre or a club or anything like that.
Really?
Never done it.
Because I know a lot of comics. I know Steve K. Amos and quite a few others go down to Sydney and they do the Australian Comedy Festival.
Yeah.
And they go down and store. Because I was going to ask you, how do you think comedy travels? Because I mean, what's funny in Scotland and what's funny in Wales and what's funny in Cornwall is not funny in London, is it?
No, there'll be certain things like local. If you do a local reference, you've got to realise that won't travel. Like you go to Inverness. What's the point in doing a routine about being on the tube?
Yeah, because they've no idea what the tube is, have they?
It's like they know what it is. They're not fools, but they're not experiencing it every day, and what people go through on there. So it's less of an issue. So you have to do changes like that. The other thing though is like if you've got material, if you were doing material about relationships, for instance, that's going to travel everywhere. If they speak the language, they'll get it. So it's a shared experience. So you just got to be careful with that. I have material that is kind of M25 friendly, but beyond that, I don't do it.
Woke up and the toilet was overflowing. Must call the plumber. Realised the kids needed swimming lessons as it's all got out of control. Luckily the old windows gave out, so we all floated outside. Must get on to the glazers. And now the garden looks atrocious. Now what was the number for that landscaper?
Because you never know when a potential customer needs you, get yourself listed in your local flyer, the local business directory. Your local flyer, bringing businesses to your fingertips.
Welcome back to the Sticks Radio Show here on Secular Sounds, and that was Coldplay from their new album of the same name, A Head Full of Dreams. And let's rejoin my guest today, none other than Lee Hurst. Let's talk about, well, I hope you're going to talk about this. You suffer from an illness, and I hope you're going to pronounce it, because I'm looking at it. It's a form of arthritis.
Yeah.
And it called
spondylitis.
That's great stuff. I'm glad you pronounced that, because I knew I was going to make a mess of it. And it's a condition that gives you acute back and joint pain.
Yeah.
Does that sort of hinder you on with your sort of work and that?
I've been fortunate over the years that it's not impacted a huge amount. Once in a blue moon, it gets me. And I have gigged on a lot of painkillers and a lot of anti-inflammatories. And other nights I've gone on, and I know it has affected the performance. You know, the movement's not there. You can't. In fact, I did a radio interview just recently, and I had a trapped nerve as a consequence. And it was catching me every time I breathed in. And so I don't know how I sounded on a radio interview, but from inside my head, it sounded weird, because I'd suddenly clip on a word because I'd just got stabbed in the back with a pain. But yeah, it affects me. I mean, the thing that affects me the most, gigging-wise, ironically, are colds, because initially I'm okay, but because I'm asthmatic, it's the back end of the cold, the breathing goes. And I have had to pull gigs because of that. I think breathing is a minimum requirement for a stand-up.
Yeah.